My name is Bryan McDowell. I own CrossFit HSE. My wife and I have owned this gym since 2016. Growing up, I was in athletics, playing a lot of baseball, and my friends were primarily athletes as well. And in my middle school years is when my good friends from sports started drinking and smoking. Saw all that, avoided it quite a bit, and then freshman year was the first time that I ever drank alcohol. It was off to the races. I had 19 shots the first time that I ever drank. From that point on, I was drinking before school, during school, after school, and that progressed on to buying marijuana, smoking weed, sneaking into mom and dad's medicine cabinets and stealing their stuff. And then into college, had elbow surgery, which led to more prescription pain medications. I moved in and out of my parents' house a handful of times during that time as well. I was in and out of Fairbanks Hospital probably a good half a dozen times. And amidst that time, I had overdosed twice. First time was on pills and alcohol. I vaguely remember passing out and asking God to save me. Woke up the next day, and I decided that I was going to go to CVS and buy some syringes and shoot up cocaine. Never done it before, did it on my own. Same thing happened. Ended up on my bathroom floor, blacked out, same thing, asked God to save me. Woke up the next day on the bathroom floor, miraculously still alive. And out of guilt the next day, took my parents to a movie, and halfway through the movie, I started shaking violently and seeing like tracers fly out the sides of my eyes, like hands were trembling. I knew it was happening from all the detox programs that I went through, that I was having delirium tremors. So I jumped out of the movie theater, ran to my car, booked it to the liquor store, chugged a pint of vodka, was driving my car up to about 71st and Shadeland. Taking a left would have taken me back to my apartment complex. Taking a right would have taken me to Fairbanks Hospital, which I had, been through the ringer there quite a few times. But I took myself to Fairbanks. Kind of saw that as a crossroads of sorts. Went in there, freaking out, scared to death, telling everybody that I was going to die. They admitted me. Put me back in this room, gave me an opportunity to call my parents. And I was in detox for right around 3 or 4 days. And in detox, you went into a room and had like your classes. And one of the guys that was the instructors, this guy named Charlo, he's actually ended up being a minister. And he came in extremely vibrant and passionate, and he just really caught my attention. And we had to write a goodbye letter to our drug of choice the day before, which was like a really odd exercise to do. But we had to go in there and read it, and I couldn't read it. Like, I was sobbing. And he pulled me in his office right after class, looked me in the eye, and told me I was going to be okay. And it's like, I cry every time. I always tell myself that I'm not going to cry every time I repeat the story. But it was like without a doubt that like God himself was telling me I was going to be okay. My parents had fortunately made a few phone calls, and one of our old neighbors was at Hebron's program through Wheeler Mission down in Bloomington, and said, hey, I think you need to give this an opportunity and go down there and do an interview. And I agreed to do so. So we traveled down to Bloomington. I had an interview with the guy in there, and my dad was in the interview with me, and the guy asked me a question. He was baiting me. He baited me really good. He said, "Do you love your father?" And I said, "Of course I love my father." And his response to me was something along the lines of, "You don't love your father. You've been sucking the life out of him," which made me extremely angry. And then for the next 10 days, I sat at home and just replayed how I was affecting my family. And he was right, and the reason I was angry at him is because he was absolutely correct. I was sucking the life out of my family. But I decided I think it was January 11th of 2005, that I was like, all right, I'll go. So I entered into Wheeler's program. Within the first few weeks of being there, my good friend Josh Stacy, he was like my big brother. They assigned me a big brother in the program, told me about Christ, and basically preached the gospel to me. Went into a room with about 30 other men, and they prayed over me and confessed to Jesus as the Lord of my life and gave my life to him. And from that moment on was a really, really hard process. It wasn't like this light switched off and I was delivered. There was a lot of junk that I had to deal with. And Wheeler's program at the time was very structured and pretty rigid, which for me is exactly what I needed. I was able to make my way through the program, graduate, and get baptized. And I stayed on for another year of servant leadership training with Wheeler and ended up working at Wheeler for right around another year after that. So for me to be in charge of programming, particularly for me being that I went through Wheeler's program myself, means a lot because I know first and fully that the program that I went through, I didn't pay for it. It was funded through donations, and Strength in the Streets, the whole purpose of this program is fundraising at the end of the day. For the CrossFitters that are entering the competition, the first thing that I would say is that this is a fundraiser. To do your best to fundraise. I was kind of doing the math in my head saying that, we have 400 athletes. What would it look like for every athlete to raise $1,000? Is that too much to ask? Maybe, I don't know. But I think that if you could find like 10 people to personally ask, like face to face, or a personal email to say, hey, I'm doing this competition, would you support me? This is what it's for. So just don't stand on the sidelines, post to Facebook, get out there and directly ask people for help. And I bet the response you're gonna get is gonna be above and beyond what you can expect. The theme of Strength in the Streets is never give up. And I think that has great correlation with homelessness addiction and what we do in the CrossFit gym. CrossFit workouts are hard, and sometimes you do want to quit because it's uncomfortable, but you look around you and nobody else is quitting, so you keep on going anyways. So that makes sense too when it comes to people that are struggling with addiction. Like, it's easy to want to give up, right? Because you feel like you're alone. I think that the athletes that are competing, if you can kind of put yourself potentially in the shoes of an addict or shoes of someone that's homeless, and when you're out there on the field, to have those other people that are struggling out there with addiction or struggling with homelessness in the back of your mind as you're doing the workouts.